911, what's your emergency? 911, what's your emergency?
Be advised, Car 4 has control of the pursuit. Proceed with caution.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. How are you all? It's good to see you. I'm happy to be here tonight. I wanted to come on and let you guys know how my impromptu trip to Delphi went. I'm so glad that I went. It was eye-opening, emotional. I met some amazing people that I have known for years in this case, and some that are brand new. But I cannot tell you how different it is to be there and to witness everything. I'm glad I went. I was considering going before the trial ever started, and I kept vying back and forth on whether or not I should go. I didn't want to seem like I was jumping on a bandwagon, so to speak, as a YouTuber. I didn't want to step on family, didn't want to step on their toes in any way, shape, or form. And I knew how limited the seating was going to be for this trial. And I didn't want them having to fight and volley for seats. So I was just really struggling. And the more I was hearing and the more I was talking to those close to the family, I was realizing that the family needed us and they needed our support in the courtroom. There is a huge negative element in that courtroom that is really hard for the families to sit day in and day out and listen to, watch, and see how they behave. And we'll talk about that. We'll get into that tonight. I'll talk about that a little bit. But welcome, everyone. Hi, Jackie. Hey, Nameless Wonder. Gibbo. Hi, Frank. Glad to have you here. Hey, CJK. Hey, Witchcraft. Hey, John. How are you? Good to have you here. Hi, Maureen. Hey, Joe. GP. Hi, Joe Mosier. Hope you're doing well. Hi, Linda. Hey, show some integrity to Lulu Bishes. Hey, Salty Beach. How are you? Hey, Heather Marie. Hey, Lynn GMB. Hi, Heather's Mirror. I'm so sorry. It was like last minute, and I didn't really make that decision. I did put it out on my community page that I was going, but it was very last minute, and I didn't stay long. Hi, Kitty Cat. Hey, Gonzo. Much love and respect, my dear. I am glad I was there. Hey, Bridget. I'm so glad you're here with us. Thank you for being here, my dear. Hey, Rescue. How are you? Rescue hosted me on Friday night. Her and Mr. Rescue are amazing, you guys. They are really amazing people. Hey, Road Dog. Camaro Lover. Hi, Cindy. Hey, Beach Fairy. Hey, Loves to Hunt. Hi, Mustang 1965. Hi, Lisa. I did have a good birthday. Thank you so very much. Thank you for everyone who sent me birthday wishes and coffees, teas. Thank you. Hey, Tech Death. Good to see you, my friend. So yeah, I made the decision on Thursday on my birthday that night. And I just basically was like, one of the things that was holding me back from going was Loki. I really didn't want to leave him. And I was like, I didn't think it was fair of me. I've only had him for 2 months. And I just didn't really think that it would be good for me to go off and leave him like that. And so I had such a full day on Thursday, being it was my birthday. And I was being pulled in every direction imaginable. And, my family wanted to see me and all of that, which is all great and good. And I love it. But, so that night I was like, I looked at my husband and I was like, I'm going to go to Delphi. And he's like, I think you should. He's like, you have put so much time and effort into this case and you should go. And so I did. I got up at 3:30 in the morning and I threw on my clothes and I'd already packed a bag and I grabbed my bag and I said goodbye to Loki and I jumped in the car and I headed to Delphi. It's about a 3-hour drive from my house, little under 3. And so I always forget the time change. I don't know why, but I do it every time I drive over there, that I go through, and there's going to be this time change. And so, I should have left earlier is what I should have done, but I hit a couple of trains. So when I arrived, my plan was to arrive in plenty of time to hit the morning session. And luckily, Jinx she's amazing, you guys. She does so much for so many cases and so many people. She's the best human being. She has the biggest hearts. But she reached out to Aspen and she's like, Kristen's coming. Is there any way that you can get a line sitter for her tonight? And I'm like, oh, good Lord, here we go. After I just called out Andrea Burkhart for line sitting, I was sitting here going, you're going to get me a line sitter? So Aspen ran over to the courthouse and put a chair out for me. Well, because I ran into the trains, I didn't get there to even use my chair. I got there 10 minutes after court started. I parked right out front in the courthouse. Parking was not an issue. And I went inside, and you go through the metal detector and they wand you basically. And of course I was setting off. The sheriff's deputy was laughing because I was setting it off. I guess I was setting it off everywhere, he said. And I have, I've got all of these charms and stuff in my hair. So that was part of it. So anyway, I go inside, and then they tell me that, you're going to be first in line for the afternoon session. And I'm like, it's 10 after 9. And I'm like, oh boy, I got a long wait to stand here. But I had just drove for 3 hours. So that was fine with me. I wasn't that upset about having to stand, although I wasn't sure how my knee was going to handle it, So anyway, I was standing there, and which felt like forever, and it really wasn't. And then I was like, I have to use the restroom. And I hadn't since I'd gotten there. So I asked where it was, and they pointed me to the restroom, and I went. And I came back, and there was somebody in line. And so I looked at the person, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was just like, this is not my day. It was Barbara McDonald. And so she was in, she was in line in front of me, and I didn't want to say anything. I just didn't, because I was just, you guys know how I feel about her. And, so anyway, what in the heck? Sorry, you guys, I'm just reading some of the chat. So anyway, we were standing there, and she said to me, aren't your feet cold? Because I had on these shoes. I wear them all the time. I absolutely love and adore them. And no, my feet weren't cold. I don't like shoes, and I don't like socks. So again, I'm a hippie. What can you say? But I said, no, my feet aren't cold. And she's like, well, she goes, are you from here? And I said, I'm from Illinois. And she goes, "Oh, so you do live here." And she said, "You must be used to the cold." And I mean, she had on a parka, like a down parka coat. And I'm like, good God, it's not that cold outside. I had a sweater on. I actually had 2 sweaters on. But anyway, so I was just kind of standing there, and we were just kind of, we were separate from each other. And pretty soon, she came over to me, and there was another woman that was walking up to get in line, and she had on a boot on one of her ankles. And I was like, oh, this poor person is going to have trouble having to stand here, all this time. I didn't know what her deal was, but I thought, oh my God, she's going to have trouble. And so she started talking to us, and she informed me she was from Kentucky and that she had been following the case, and not for a long time, but she's like, I just hate what's happening to this guy. It's just awful. And she was going on. I'm like, oh, good Lord. And so here I am in the midst of these 2 people. One I have never seen before, who's obviously pro Richard Allen, and the other one who we all know is just like, not somebody to respect. And pretty soon Barbara McDonald turns to me and she says, well, what's your take on have you been following the case? And I said, yeah, I've been following the case since day one. I said, I had a Reddit sub, and then I started my YouTube channel. And she goes, oh, so you know who I am? I said, yeah, I know you're Barbara McDonald. And so the other girl looks over and she goes, who's Barbara McDonald? I thought that was kind of funny. But and I didn't tell her who she is or anything. And she never asked me who I was. She never asked me what my YouTube channel was, and I didn't offer it. And so she said to me, she said, well, how do you think the case is going so far? And I said, I think that the prosecution is doing very well. I think they're very strong. And I said, and I think he's guilty as hell. And they both just looked at me, and Barbara said, oh. And I said, how could you look at the evidence that's been presented and not see this man's guilt when he's put himself out there? I said, it's going to be his own words that sink him. He's the one who placed himself in the middle of this crime. He placed himself there in the middle of the timeline. People saw him there. And I was like, then you have 61 confessions. Not all 61 of those confessions was coerced. In fact, if you listen to his telephone call to his mother and his wife, he sounds completely lucid and normal. He doesn't sound like a crazy person. So what are you going to do? So that's how my morning started off. So we're all 3 standing there in line waiting. And pretty soon there was a break. And the courtroom is on the 3rd floor. And this courthouse is absolutely gorgeous, you guys. I mean, it just reminds me of the old courthouses that we have here in Illinois, in these little small towns that have squares in the center. And then in the middle of that square is their courthouse. And the rotunda is just absolutely gorgeous. It's all marble, and it has these spiral staircases, one on, like, there's one here and there's one here, and then they go up to the 2nd level, and then to the 3rd level. And it's just gorgeous inside, and just beautiful. But anyway, the courtroom is up on the 3rd floor. So, one of the deputies had talked to me when I first got there, and he asked me all these questions. He wanted to know where I came from, if I, had been following the case and stuff. And so I told him I had a YouTube channel and everything. So he knew all that, and he knew that I had drove 3 hours from Illinois. And when we were standing there, he was talking to me about having to stand there. And I was like, well, I had a knee replacement in April. I'm not sure how good my knee's going to like me just standing here for 4 or 3 hours. 3 hours, I guess it was going to be. And so he knew that. So when they had the break, he told us that we could go upstairs and get a seat. And he looked at me and he goes, "You can take the elevator." And I was like, "Thank you." So I went and took the elevator upstairs. I got off the elevator, and lo and behold, sitting outside the courtroom in the chairs was Becky and Kelsey. And Becky was sitting there, and she was eating. And I start to walk up, and she sees me, and we smile at each other, and she gets up to hug me, and she gives me this huge hug, and I hug her back, and I said, "I just had to come." I said, "I needed to be here to support you guys." And she said, "We really need it." And she said, "And I'm really glad you're here." She said, "Would you like some?" She had a Swiss roll in her hand, and I said, "No, thank you." First thing out of her heart is she wants to give me something to eat. And so I knew all eyes were on us, and I was going to be real careful of what I said to her publicly where people could, see or hear us. So I kept it short and sweet, and I just went into the courtroom. And I walked in the courtroom, and they had told us to sit in empty seats. As long as no one was sitting in them, we could sit in an empty seat. So I sat in an empty seat pretty much right when I got in the room, not realizing that I was sitting on the Richard Allen side. And as the people started coming back into the courtroom, Kathy Allen was right directly in front of me. Thank you, Jackie. And so I'm sitting there, and pretty soon this woman comes in, and she goes, "You can't sit there. That's my seat." And I was like, "Well, there's no names on them." And I said, "And there's none of your stuff here or anything." And they told us that we could sit anywhere that there was an empty seat. So this is going on, and Marv from Beyond the Evidence happens to see me from across the room, sees this coming, and she comes and gets me, and she goes, "Kristen, you can come sit by me. There's an empty seat by me." And I said, "Thank you so much, Marv." So thank you, Marv, for being there and for saving me. So I went over and I sat on the other side behind the families. I was directly behind Tara, German, and then Becky and Mike were directly in front of us with Kelsey. So that's where I ended up sitting on Friday. It was about 20 minutes to 10, and court was called back into session. And the courtroom was full. I'm looking around this room, you guys, and I see all of these familiar faces that I have covered for nearly 8 years. I see all the law enforcement guys. I see the attorneys. I see Nick McClelland. I see, Andrew Baldwin and Rosie and Ajay and Diener. I mean, Steve Mullins is sitting at the prosecution table. as well as Jerry Holman, and who happens to be sitting right next to Richard Allen, who happens to be at the defense table, because the defense table, the prosecution table, there's only like this much in between them. That's how smart, you know what I mean? That's how like small this room is. And then they have this big ass TV screen in front of the prosecution's table that faces directly to the jury. And I'm just looking around this room, and like I said, I'm seeing everybody. And I happen to look over to my right, and right across the aisle from me is Aspen Connor. And so I'm like, Aspen. I'm whispering his name. He turns and he looks and he stands up and we both hug. And so that was my first meeting of him, which was phenomenal. And he's like, "You made it. You made it." And I was like, "Yes." And it was funny because I had talked to Jinx on the phone on my way in. I had her on speaker as I was driving, and we were talking, and she's like, "Did you remember to bring your notebook?" And I was like, "No, I walked off and left it on my desk at home," which I did. I had all that stuff out and I left it. And so she's like, "Well, you're going to need a notebook." So I had stopped. I don't remember where, but I had stopped. I ran into a store and I grabbed a couple of pens and I grabbed a notebook and some Gatorade and some gum, because I knew that we couldn't eat in the courtroom and I knew that we couldn't drink in the courtroom. But I was worried because I was like, you know, with the bariatric surgery that I had, I'm supposed to sip on something of liquid constantly, or I can't get enough liquid in through the day and I dehydrate. And I was worried about that. And I was like, okay, this is going to be really interesting, an interesting day for me. So anyway, the day started, guys. I got in the courtroom and, you know, they called in the jury and the jury came in, and it was very interesting to watch that, you know, to watch the whole process and to be there and see that. And Judge Gull comes in, and there's a lot of standing and sitting and standing, and please be seated. All stand or all rise. I was like, geez, I feel like I'm in church. I mean, it was just a lot of up and down. And a lot of sidebars. There were Friday court date. We had a lot of sidebars, which I know some people were, you know, were like, "Ah, another one." I'm like, this is what happens. This is how court goes. It wasn't to me anything unusual. You know, that's what they do, and both sides, you know, do it. But so when they have sidebars, Judge Gull comes off of the bench and walks behind the TV screen. And behind that TV screen is where she meets with the attorneys. And she was facing us for the longest time. And I could see her. She was so animated. You could almost tell that she was really schooling the defense at times on the law. And I mean, you couldn't hear anything that was being said because she used a white noise maker, sound maker. She would put that on when she would go off the bench. So it was this humming, like loud, staticky kind of sound. But they had told us and warned us that we needed to be quiet during the sidebars in the gallery because they could hear us on the tape. And so, you know how it is when you have a group of adults and trying to get them all to be quiet? It doesn't necessarily work, right? And my voice, when you guys ever meet me for the first time or whatever, I have a very loud voice. It carries. My dad was hard of hearing growing up, so we all had to speak loudly to be heard. And I just always have a loud voice. And so Marv was telling me about what I had missed, about who had been on the, stand before I got there. And she was talking to me, and it was carrying. Well, Carrie, Libby's mom, was sitting directly in front of me. So Carrie's mom was directly in front of me with her daughters. And Carrie turns around and looks at me and gives me a dirty look, like, shh. And so Marv and I'm like, oh God, we just got in trouble from Carrie. I'm like, oh my God, I could have crawled under my chair. I felt so bad. And so for the rest of the day, we were super careful that if we spoke at all during sidebars or recesses or breaks, whatever, we would try and be really quiet. So, yeah, it was, to tell you guys that it's surreal to be in that courtroom it doesn't do it justice, because I'm here to tell you it's a lot. The chairs that you sit in are all wood. They remind me of the old wooden desks that we had when I was in grade school. And they're super thin wood, and there's just no support. And it is a lot, you guys, to sit there on that all day long. Man, yeah, crazy, crazy. So the first, what was I trying to say? What was I trying to say? I can't remember now. The first witness for the defense that day was Christopher Guti. And as soon as they called him, the state immediately called for a sidebar. And Guti tells the jury that he is a Hammond, Indiana police officer who has a background as an EMT. And he says that he has training in interviewing witnesses and suspects. The defense attorney, Jennifer Auger, was asking him about the importance of correctly documenting interviews. And Guti says that he was with an FBI gang response task force, or GRIT, and that they had focused on kidnappings. And Guti told the jury that GRIT assisted with the Delphi investigation by canvassing the neighborhoods and conducting interviews. He said that he had worked on the investigation for over a week. He told the jury that he spoke to Brad Weber during this investigation. And Auger asked Guti what Weber said about where he went after work on February 13th, 2017. And Auger asked Guti what an FBI 302 is, and Guti says it's a report from an interview. And Auger showed him an exhibit, which was this FBI 302 report from his interview with Brad Weber. And he says he spoke to Weber on February 19th, 2017, and he told the jury that he doesn't know what Weber said despite looking at his own report. He would have to look at the report to refresh his memory. Auger finishes her questions, and the state did not cross-examine him. At 9:27 a.m., the defense called Deanna Dwenger. Dwenger tells the jury that she oversaw the Department of Behavioral Health at the Indiana Department of Corrections, and she had been the director there since of the department since 2021. She said that her main job was to oversee the IDOC's contract with the contractor who actually does the employing for the IDOC's behavioral staff. And Dweninger tells the jury that she generally knows who Richard Allen is. She confirms that Allen was transferred out of the Westville Correctional Facility, and she says that the solitary units at Westville and the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility are very similar. She went on to say that she had not personally met Richard Allen and did not make any decision to move him and did not know who did. Dweninger said that Dr. Monica Walla, the assigned psychologist for Allen, told her after she was assigned to Allen that she had a special interest. Dweninger tells the jury that Walla told her about listening to Delphi podcasts and recommended it to her in early 2023. And Allen went to Westville at the end of 2022. Dweninger says that she knew that Walla had visited the Monon High Bridge, but says it was before being assigned to Richard Allen. Dweninger tells the jury she thought it was unusual to visit the crime scene of someone you work with, but said that Walla talked to her direct supervisor about the issue more. The state requests another sidebar about the use of the words crime scene. Dweninger tells the jury she is familiar with Dr. Martin and that he is a psychiatrist and administers the medications. She says Dr. Martin is no longer working at the IDOC. She says Allen was assessed in Indianapolis and was assigned a D code in mental health. And she explained that a D code means a person that would benefit from a specific and personal therapy treatment plan. Dweninger tells the jury she does not know if there's ever been a safekeeper in either Westville or Wabash Valley. She says she doesn't know why he was assigned there. She says she knew there was video or cameras in his cell and that worried her. She said she recommended the video be removed, but it didn't happen. Dweninger tells the jury that solitary confinement can impact mental health and that it is not unreasonable to think being in solitary would be or have a negative effect or impact over time. She said 30 or more days of solitary happens only if the inmate is severely mentally ill. And she tells the jury that the 30-day rule exists to keep people from being in there too long. Dweninger tells the jury that Allen was gravely disabled. She explains that the difference between mental health monitoring and mental health treatment. She said the treatment is more focused on actual therapeutics, and she says that the therapeutic setting at Westville was not ideal. And you can imagine, I mean, it's a prison. Dweninger confirms that she was on a team that discussed Allen's care, though was not directly treating him. She described herself as a sounding board for those who were. And the state requests another sidebar after Rosie asked Dweninger about solitary confinement for mentally ill patients. At 9:56, Rosie ends his questioning and the prosecution attorney, Stacy Diener, begins her cross-examination of Dweninger. And Dweninger confirms to Allen was not severely mentally ill and began to decompensate until he was in the Westville Correctional Unit. She says she was first contacted about Allen in April of 2023, and she says that's when his core team was formed. The first contact she described was coming from Dr. Walla asking if Richard Allen could have a meeting with his wife. And Dweninger tells the jury that at that point, Walla told her that Allen was faking it. Dweninger tells the jury the team was called an MDT, or a multidisciplinary team. She explains that gravely ill means you aren't able to take care of yourself. She says it got to the point where it didn't matter if he was faking it and they needed to intervene. Dwininger explains Haldol shots to the jury. She says it helps with psychosis symptoms, and being gravely ill is a symptom of psychosis. Rosie objected to that and said it was a leading question. At 10:04 a.m., Stacy Diener ended her cross-examination and Rosie began his redirect. Diener asked for a sidebar, and Judge Gull looked very frustrated. The state objects again after Rosie asks another question. Both end, and the jury asks questions. The first question from the jury: does the DOC ever place safekeepers in general population? And Dwininger says yes. Question number 2 from the jury was, could it be possible Richard Allen was faking so he would not be moved to general population? Dwininger said it was possible, but don't know for Allen. The third question from the jury was, did you hear threats to Richard Allen from other inmates? And Dwininger says no. The fourth question was, could a person slip in truth of a confession even when faking? Dwininger says it is hard to tell, but yes. She says you can tell if people are faking it based on the organization of thoughts, if the conversation is goal-oriented and chronological. She says Allen was not having delirium. The fifth question from the jury was, what is the typical process for safekeepers with severe mental illness? And Dwininger says the same as general. What was the sixth and final question from the jury was, what is the primary obligation to a safekeeper working with an inmate with severe mental illness? And Dwininger says same as general. At 10:23, the court went into recess. And that's when I was able to get in the court. And at 10:40, the court came back into session, and there was an immediate sidebar. And then the jury enters. At 10:46, the defense called Mr. Max Baker, who we know as the intern who works for the defense. He was a graduate of Indiana University and worked on the case since November of 2022. He told the jury that he heard Harshman's testimony, and at this point, Allen's wife, Kathy, leaves the courtroom with 3 other people. Baker testifies that he has reviewed most of Richard Allen's phone calls and videos from Westville and says he was asked to compile video of Richard Allen at Westville and put it on a flash drive. The prosecution continually objects. Baker says the video was given to the prosecution as part of the discovery. He says there are 2 main video formats, camcorder video and security camera video. The camcorder video is video that is done outside of Richard Allen's cell, and the guards actually carry a camcorder and record. And the security video is from inside Richard Allen's cell, and the camcorder video has sound. The security video from inside his cell does not. Baker tells the jury the camcorder video did not have a timestamp. It was put in folders with general timeline information. He says he tried to piece it together as best he could. He explains that the in-cell video on the flash drive is from the 15th of every month from November of 2022 to December of 2023, aside from April to July of 2023, where there is more video than just on the 15th. The defense asked to admit the video. They also show spreadsheets that explain the videos by date and the time the video was taken. The prosecution objected here, and there is another sidebar, and then the court is in recess at 11:10 a.m. At 11:31, the court came back into session, and the defense intern Max Baker came back onto the stand. The defense immediately requests a sidebar. The sidebar lasted 10 minutes, and then the jury was brought back into the courtroom. Baker tells the jury there is an issue with the security and camcorder videos of Richard Allen because the prosecution provided them to the defense without the needed timestamps. Rosie says we are dealing with what we were given by the state. Judge Gull tells the jury that they will break for lunch until 1 p.m. and the court goes into recess at 11:52 a.m. We also found out that the defense filed a motion that morning requesting an FBI special agent be allowed to testify remotely. They want Adam Pohl, who is currently working in San Antonio, Texas, to testify. And they said that he is a necessary witness for the defense, and that his testimony will only take 30 minutes. Pohl is currently the election crime coordinator for the FBI San Antonio, Texas division. The defense says that it is extremely difficult for Pohl to appear in person given his current job responsibilities pertinent to the November 5th election. He was previously assigned to Indiana. So the court came back into session at 1:05 p.m. and at 1:10 p.m., the defense called Brad Heath to the witness stand. Heath tells the jury that he lives outside of Delphi and that he's 70 years old and that he worked for Reliable Exterminators and retired 5 years ago. Heath says he managed company business for the Delphi area and the surrounding spots, and he described doing a job at a company called Anderson's and the scans of the building he did on February 13th, 2017. His last scan was at 2:06 p.m. Defense attorney Rosie hands Heath a report, and he requested that shows what Heath did that day at that stop. And the report refers to Heath seeing a vehicle at 8:45 a.m. in the morning of the murders. He noticed it was in the same location in the afternoon, and Heath said the car was halfway down the road near the CPS building, parked about 2 feet off the road. He said it was an older car and looked out of place. He said he went to law enforcement a week after the crimes to tell them after he realized what had happened. He said he talked to law enforcement a few times over the years at his own prompting. He said he recently spoke to law enforcement about having seen a car that looked like it was in a movie. He says the car was a four-door that looked like it was from the 80s or 90s. He said it was 150 to 250 yards away from it when he saw it. The defense shows a photo of the car. He said he had no recollection of cars being in the CPS lot or not. He wasn't paying attention to that. He said he saw different angles of the same car at different points throughout the day. The prosecution had no questions for Brad Heath. At 1:28 p.m., the defense called David McCain. McCain said he lives just outside of Delphi. He says he lived there 20 years and is 79 years old. McCain said he is a longtime volunteer and was a project manager for the Monon High Bridge Trail. McCain goes on to tell the jury that he went to the bridge many times as a child and started planning to develop the trail in 2013. He said he's walked the bridge many times and was out there just a month ago. McCain said he was on the trail and bridge on February 13th, 2017. He said he got to the trails around 2 or 3 p.m. and parked at the Mears entrance. He said he saw no other cars there and he walked to the high bridge. He said he took photos and walked just the beginning of the bridge. McCain said the bridge is 65 feet above the water and you can see it clearly below. He tells the jury he used a camera, not a phone, to take photos that day, and he said he did that for less than a half hour. McCain said he saw a couple while he was there. He said it could have been before or after he went to the bridge. He couldn't remember. He said there may have been people off in the distance that he saw, but only the couple, but he'd only passed the couple. He said he left before 4 p.m. and that he was surprised at the number of people at the Mears entrance when he returned to his car. McCain tells the jury he did not see pedestrians on 300 North when he left. He said, someone shouted to me, "Have you seen the girls?" when he was leaving the entrance. He said that evening he was at a community meeting and some emergency people came in and said they were investigating missing kids. McCain said he became concerned about the girls and called the sheriff's office to tell them that he was there that day. McCain said that 2 FBI agents and 1 Indiana State police officer came to his house and interviewed him. He said he gave them the photos from his camera and his SIM card. He said 2 or 3 years later, he was called and asked if he had seen a certain car in the distance of his photos. McCain said he never got his SIM card back. At 1:50 p.m., the state began their cross-examination, and prosecutor James Luttrell shows McCain a document of an FBI interview, and defense attorney Andrew Baldwin objects, saying it is improper. And Judge Gull allows McCain to look at the document. Luttrell asks him if he left at 4 p.m. or shortly after, and he says yes. McCain says the man shouting at him that day was a pretty large man in a bright orange jacket. He said something like, "Have you seen the girls?" in a concerned way. At 2:05 p.m., the defense called former Delphi Fire Chief Darrell Starrett. This is the 8th witness for the defense, and Starrett says he grew up in Delphi and graduated in 1985, and that he's been a firefighter for 36 years, and he was the fire chief in Delphi on February 13th, 2017. Starrett says he was at the station house around 6 o'clock that night because there was a training event, and he said that word came in that 2 girls were missing. He said he went to the Carroll County Sheriff's Office where Joint Command had been set up, and Starrett said they tried to figure out where they were and sent people to search for them. He tells the jury that they were directing the search through dispatch and that Mullen and Lesenby were in charge of the search. Starrett is shown a document that kept track of where the firefighters were, cadets, and officers were all searching. And he said they are an entirely volunteer department, but everyone was at the station that day because of this training event. Starrett tells the jury they were notified about the girls at 7:01 p.m. He said he left to go to Unified Command at 7:10 p.m. He says about 6 of the volunteer firefighters were at the bridge that night at around 9:30. He took his personal vehicle, and the volunteer firefighters took 2 fire trucks. Starrett said he entered the trails off of 625 West and drove to the end of it and parked. He said there were houses on the left. He said he parked in someone's yard. He said one vehicle drove up to the bridge, but the others walked. Starrett told the jury that they needed the search to be boots on the ground. He said he thought the girls were scared and cold. It was a very organized, he said it was not a very organized grid type search. He said the searchers were separated by varying amounts of distance, and he said they stayed more southwest of the bridge and only on the east side a bit. Starrett said he left the scene around 1:30 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m. on February 14th. Starrett corrects himself and says he left at 2:30 a.m. on the 14th. Starrett said he ordered a search north, south, east, and west of the bridge. In a deposition, he said there may have been higher intensity lights from vehicles, but he is not sure. He says the night was very dark and that the firefighters were using department-issued flashlights, which had a spot or flood setting. He said someone may have shined a light on Deer Creek to check for the girls. Starrett told the jury that nobody from his team saw anything floating in the creek and did not hear anyone shout out saying they saw anything. He said he could hear people during the search. The prosecution did not have any questions, and they did not cross-examine him. The jury asked 2 questions of Starrett. How long did you give your deposition? Did you get a copy at that time? And Starrett replies that it was 3 weeks ago and that it was mailed to him. The other question was, did you search the area southeast of the cemetery? And he replied, I did not personally. And the court went into recess at 2:55 p.m. Um, the trial did go and resume at 3:20 in the afternoon, and Steve Mullen, the former Delphi police chief, took the stand again. Mullen was chief in 2017 when the bodies of the victims, Abby and Libby, were found. He now is an investigator for Carroll County and was an investigator for the prosecution in this case. The first question to him from the defense team for suspect Richard Allen was, how important would you say it is to preserve evidence? It is important to everyone, Mullen said. Andrew Baldwin asked him, how important would it be to alert the defense if there's missing evidence? And the prosecution objects to this question, leading to a sidebar of the prosecution and defense team at the judge's bench. Baldwin implied evidence in the Delphi murders case had gone missing, and the fact was being kept from the prosecution. And that fact was being kept from the defense, not the prosecution. Baldwin said he wanted the jury to understand how Mullen's credibility could be in doubt. Returning to questions from Baldwin, Mullen admitted important interviews of dozens of witnesses in the Delphi murders investigation from February 14th, 2017 to sometime in early March of 2017 were not made available to the prosecution or to the defense. In August, they discovered the problem, which involved a digital video recorder. Mullen said, according to a pool reporter's note, the former police chief said the videos were lost and later recovered, but they didn't have audio. And Mullen went on to say that there was nothing he could do to recover the interviews. And he drafted 2 reports, undated, about the missing interviews. However, the former police chief said both the prosecution and the defense team had those interviews that were available. And Baldwin asked him, was there a single person that was re-interviewed from these missing interviews? And Mullen said, I believe there was, but I don't recall. He said he couldn't answer without refreshing his memory. The defense team didn't learn about the missing interviews until February of this year. The questioning from Baldwin next turned to Brad Weber, the Carroll County resident that lives off County Road 625 West, just outside of Delphi, and owns the property near the Monon High Bridge where the girls were killed. The former police chief said he met with Brad Weber in August of this year, but didn't tape record that interview. I could have, but I didn't, Mullen said. Weber had testified Wednesday that he worked the first shift at Subaru near Lafayette and was at work on February 13th, 2017, the day of the murder. Weber said he was at work from 5:41 a.m. until 2:02 p.m., and his drive home was approximately 20 to 25 minutes. The next question to Mullen involved whether his interview with Weber saw any inconsistencies. And yes, there is some conflict about it, Mullen said. Next, Baldwin alluded to the police interview of Allen. How long have you believed that only one person was involved in the murders of Abby and Libby? Since the arrest of Richard Allen, Mullen replied. Before that, did you believe there were more people involved in the crime? Baldwin asked. It doesn't really matter what I believed, the former police chief said. Baldwin later tried to ask questions of Mullen about 2 witnesses, Betsy Blair and Sarah Carbaugh, who were on the Monon High Bridge Trail that same day, as was Abby and Libby. The prosecution objected, and a sidebar was called, and after that, the trial went ahead. Just after 4 p.m., Baldwin asked Mullen, "Do you believe sticks were placed on their bodies?" "I don't know," Mullen replied. Later, Mullen was asked about a camera at the trail. The former police chief said the camera recorded video but no audio. On February 14, 2017, in the wee hours, Mullen said it showed that there was someone in front of the camera on the day that the search was taking place. The person was in front of the trail cam pictured in the trail cam. The former police chief said the trail camera is located west of where the girls' bodies were found. After the girls' bodies were discovered in 2017, tips were taken through a special process set up by a group of law enforcement agencies. Mullins testified they received only one tip about Richard Allen. Mullen also testified that he did not know why it took so long to process DNA from the crime scene. In August of 2019, the Indiana State Police released a short video and audio clip from Liberty German's phone in which a person was heard saying, "down the hill." The full video has previously been shown to the jury. Andrew Baldwin asked if the law enforcement groups got any tips from the clip that was released in August of 2019, and Mullen said perhaps hundreds of tips were received. Baldwin also asked if Mullen believed Allen ever returned to the scene, and Mullins replied, "I don't know." Next, Baldwin asked how many times Allen confessed before being moved, reportedly for his safety from the Carroll County Jail to Westville Correctional Facility. "None," Mullen replied. In the cross-examination from the prosecution and the redirect from the defense team, Mullen later provided the following information. Weber had consented to a test of his Sig Sauer gun. It was determined that gun was not connected to a cartridge that was found at the crime scene. Mullen remembers details of the August contact with Weber because he reviewed text messages. Next, the jury questions came, and Mullen revealed investigators later identified the person seen on the trail cam. That person's name was not shared, and Mullen also said the place where the bodies were found could not be seen from the trail cam. He said the trail cam's timestamp was not accurate. On another question, Mullen said he believed that the place where the bodies were found was where the girls died. The next witness called was Tobe Lesenby, who was the Carroll County Sheriff from 2015 to 2022, and he's now a chief deputy for the sheriff's office. Tobe testified he's always thought only one person was involved in the girls' deaths. Defense attorney Baldwin, however, noted that Lesenby's August 2023 deposition, where he replied trial information was multiple or at least two. Trial information. Baldwin asked Lesenby, "You felt 10 months after Allen's arrest that at least two people were involved." And that drew 3 objections from the prosecution team. And Special Judge Fran Gull overruled the last objection. Baldwin then asked Lesenby if he knew of anyone who believed more than one killer was involved. The prosecution again objected, but the judge overruled the objection. Lesenby said Detective Tony Liggett, who was the current Carroll County Sheriff, believed more than one killer was involved, based on a 2017 conversation. Why did they think that? Andrew Baldwin asked. It was based upon the totality of the information provided to investigators at that time period, Lesenby said. In cross-examination, Lesenby affirmed Liggett didn't have details. Lesenby also told the prosecution he did not personally investigate any murders during his career, but was involved in murder investigations at lower levels. At that point in time, he was dismissed. There were no further witnesses for the day, and the jury was let go. And then there were motions that were addressed in court. The motion from the defense to have an inmate in Indiana's Department of Corrections facilities be transported. The defense noted its latest motion to admit evidence of Odinism, a modern pagan religion and an Old Norse religion, and a third motion for a FBI witness, special agent, who was out of state on assignment to appear remotely. Judge Gull, after speaking briefly to the defense, told them she would grant the motion for inmate Jesse James, to be transported to the courtroom in Delphi. And she denied the motion to allow testimony about Odinism, stating that there was no nexus. And she also denied the witness via video conferencing. It was really wild, you guys, to watch the motions and how she dealt with those. And then to see the dejection on the face of the defense attorneys. They were extremely shocked, I think, about that. And I think, one of the things that happened was they realized at that moment that, oh my God, she's not going to let this in. This is our defense, That's my take on it. I mean, Marv was telling me that the scuttlebutt of people who had talked to some people on the defense side was, if they couldn't get their Odinism angle in, they were going to only have an additional 3 days of evidence. So we know they're going to have some experts that need to be dealt with this week. But after I heard that, my feeling was, wow, this case could go to the jury by Friday. What was I going to say? So during the day, I told you that there were multiple recesses, multiple sidebars and stuff like that. During the breaks, I didn't leave the courtroom. I stayed right there in my seat, or I stood up. And at one point, I was sitting there. The family had left to go out, and there was no one between me and the defense table where Richard Allen was sitting. And Richard Allen would go like this and sit and swing back and forth in his chair and move back and forth. And he would swing his chair all the way around and look at everyone in the gallery. He would look at all of us, and he would look all the way around the room. And he did that all the time. Or he would absolutely stand up, because they let him stand up, and he would stand up and turn around and look at everybody. And at one of these points, I was sitting there, and he looked directly at me. He looked directly into my eyes, and I looked back. And I was sitting there looking at this man, and his pensive glare, it felt eerie, because it was like he was looking through me. I mean, it was just an incredible look. It made me really uncomfortable. It was just crazy. It was kind of like that look that we saw in that car where he was caught. It was just that stare. It was just really crazy. And so it was weird watching him. And, when you're in there, you're watching all of the dynamics of everything. You're watching the facial expressions on the jurors. There's one juror in particular in the back on the far end who's taking copious notes. He reminds me of myself because he's just constantly writing. I took 20 pages of notes on Friday, and that was a lot of writing. I mean, you're trying to get down the question, you're trying to get down their answer. I have so much respect for everyone who has been in that courtroom from day one and is sitting there trying to keep their seats in the middle of the night, going without sleep, going without food. You can have no drink and no food in that courtroom. And the way it works is that as soon as court is dismissed in the morning, people go downstairs, people leave the courtroom, go downstairs, and immediately get in line for the session in the afternoon. So you're not leaving to go eat and to go have lunch. You're just standing in line, which is basically what we did. And Baldwin reaching over and patting Richard Allen on the back. I saw that a couple of times. Richard constantly looking over to see if Kathy is in court and if she's sitting there, and lo and behold, she's sitting right next to Bob Mata, and Barbara McDonald, if you can believe that. And then there was, behind them was Lawyer Lee and Andrea Burkhart. And when I got that pointed out to me, I was instantly angry because I called her out on my show, obviously, before anybody really knew who she was. And I'm just aghast at the things that this woman is doing and saying, and the behavior of her, and how she's just walking around like she's some real important person. And now she's got the ear of the defense team. Andrew Baldwin has been seen talking to her, and asking her questions. That's bizarre to me. But here we go. I mean, we all know that this defense team has used social media and people from social media in this defense. We know that. I walked out of court on Friday, and the first thing I saw were people standing out there holding signs, Richard Allen is innocent. Disbar Judge Gull. No cameras, no wonder. I was just floored, guys, just floored by, it's just like, I just can't get over it. I just really can't. I was absolutely super exhausted. Hey, Melissa, congratulations on your 13 months of membership. I love you too. And so, it was just, and Gail, thank you so much for your, membership gifts. I saw that, and I absolutely, I love that you give memberships to my channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Corgi Mama. Thank you so much for supporting this live stream. I appreciate you so much. I was just floored by some of the things that I saw. And I was so tired. Like I said, I can't tell you the physical toll that it takes to sit in that courtroom and listen to this. And my God, Andy Baldwin is horrible at asking questions for a man who claims to have been doing this for so long and is such a good attorney, he does not know how to put together a question. He had a hell of a time with Steve Mullins. And they, it's just super dry, it's just like, and I was fighting not falling asleep because I was so tired from getting up in the middle of the night to drive to Delphi. I'm not used to that. And so I was super tired. And I was like, oh, good Lord, I'm going to get in trouble and get called out by Judge Gull for sleeping in her courtroom. And this is not going to be a good thing. And I was really fighting sleep. But I continued taking my notes and trying to stay awake. And I told the woman who was sitting next to me, I said, if I start to fall asleep, please just elbow me and yell at me or whatever. There was a point we had a break in the middle of the afternoon, and Becky came back to me and was talking to me about stuff. And it was really nice to get the chance to talk with her and everything. And she thanked me again for coming and being there and told me how important it is to them that we're all there. You guys have to realize the families are under a gag order and they can't speak. They can't talk openly about what's going on and how they feel. And that to me is so difficult. I can't even imagine going through something like this and not being able to express your feelings and how you're dealing with what's going on. So basically we're their mouth. We're able to speak kind of for them and call some of this crap out on their behalf, because it's just ridiculous what they've had to look at, what they've had to see, what they've had to listen to in this courtroom. Carrie says, thanks, Carrie, for your super sticker. Or your super chat, sorry. The little Dicky supporters were lurking around, rounding attention on seeking justices for Abby and Libby. Absolutely. Absolutely. Libby and Abby have been forgotten in all of this. And one of the things that I've seen in all of this is the fact that, that they have to put up with so much, and the things that they've had to witness and hear about their beautiful little girls. Anna was in court on Friday. She was there with her dad, her mom, her stepdad, her dad's wife. They were all there to support her. They all sat in the same line with Kelsey and Becky and Mike. And, so she sat catty corner from me, 2 rows up from me. So I had a direct eye shot to her. And to see Anna and know how difficult this has been on her, it just, oh my God, you guys, the emotion that you feel for these people that you have grown to care about over all the years from covering this and talking about this, and you're sitting there and you're looking at these people and you realize that these are real people with real emotions. They're just not names. It's not just a story that we tell, that this is raw and hurting, the raw emotion and the raw hurting that you're watching. Carrie was sitting directly in front of me, and you could see how difficult some of this stuff was for her. It's just crazy. It's like they've forgotten about Abby and Libby, and that the humanity, and that's kind of what happens in our justice system, which I think is so wrong. And I think that we saw it full force yesterday. I started to say on Friday, after court was done, I was exhausted. And Aspen asked me if I wanted to go out with them later. They were going to all go out. And I was just kind of like, I kind of wanted to, but I was too tired. And I knew that there was no way if I did that, that I would ever make it to court on Saturday morning. Well, Rescue had offered for me to stay with her, and she's down by Indy. So I knew I had to drive a ways. And so I was kind of like, I'm just gonna go see Rescue. So that's what I did. And I'm really glad I did. I got to meet her, and she is amazing. I mean, I already had met her, but I mean, to see her the way I did in her home with her family, and her dogs. Oh, her dogs are wonderful, you guys. And everything. It was great. It was fantastic. And I was so tired. And I told her in Mr. Rescue, I'm like, I just don't know if how I'm going to stay up. And I ended up crashing that night. And I didn't end up in court on Saturday. I didn't go to court. I went to Delphi after Rescue, and we went to see the Flora girls. She took me to the cemetery, and I got to see them. And you guys, oh my God, you talk about an emotional, that was, I am so, so glad. I haven't reached out to Galen yet because I haven't been home long enough, but I'm going to reach out to her and let her know that I was there, and that I'm going to hit this case hard when the stuff with Delphi is over. But yeah, that just brought all of that back. And that was pretty hard, but I was really glad that Rescue took me. It was really important. So anyway, we did that. I had breakfast, and I hopped in the car, said goodbye, and flew back up to Delphi because Aspen had asked me to have lunch with him. And I was like, fine, we'll do lunch. So I get to Delphi just as court is exiting, just as everybody is getting out of court. I get out of the car and I go up there, and, and I was like, I was apologizing for missing the day and for not being there because they had saved me a seat in line, in the line that we stand in. And they're like, oh, Kristen, you did not want to be here. It was terrible. It was a horrible day. Horrible day. And as they're talking to me about this and the fact that, they were trying to protect the dignity of Richard Allen and his rights and all of this with these videos that were being shown. Here comes Carrie with the girls. And mind you, they're coming out of the courthouse down the stairs, and off to the right of us are even more protesters. And Andrea Burkhart standing there taking photographs with them, with these people. And they're all laughing and making all kinds of funnies and whatever. And we've got the girls' families coming out of the courthouse. If that doesn't tell you what these people are about, you guys, nothing will. You don't behave that way. That is disgusting behavior. Becky made the comment to me that this woman, Andrea Burkhart, actually came up to her and said she was there to protect Richard Allen's Sixth Amendment rights. Who goes up to the mother of the victim grandmother of the victim and tells them that. Do you even know who the hell you're speaking to? I was just floored by that, you guys. Floored by that. Then I'm sitting here witnessing her standing outside this courthouse in front of Carrie, in front of family, not only laughing, but joking and taking photo ops with people holding signs, Richard Allen is innocent. And I was just like, this is a woman who openly said on her channel before she flew into Indiana to cover this case that she'd never covered this case on her channel and knew nothing about it. But all of a sudden now she thinks Richard Allen's innocent. Give me a break. It's just god awful. And the word is that she's making over $4,000 a live stream. I mean, it's just disgusting. And I will rip her a new one, Rippy for Freedom. I'm going to attack Andrea. I already attacked her. So anyway, I hollered at her. She's walking across the street after her little photo op. And I yelled at her and I said, hey, Andrea. And she turns and looks at me and I go, you need to be ashamed of yourself. I said, you ought to have been ashamed of yourself. And she's like, oh, really? Okay. Like, you know, she could care less. She knew why she was there. She needed to get over her 100,000 and she did it. And she did it on the backs of Abby and Libby. It's horrible. But anyway, you guys, so I'm standing there and Carrie comes up to me and she, Libby's mom, she comes up to me and she looks at me and she goes, she grabs my arms here and she said, I did not mean to yell at you yesterday. And I said, oh, you're fine. I said, you were totally fine. She goes, oh, she said, I was so emotional and and she goes, I am not normally like this. She was so apologetic. It was so sweet. I gave her the biggest hug. And I told her, I said, you do not ever have to apologize to me for anything. I said, I am on your side 150% in all of this. And I said, you have whatever emotion you need to have. And if it's directed at me, I'm good with that. I just told her, I said it was, that I was so, so sorry with what they had to witness today. So I told you guys, I posted it on my community page, and I know that you guys have probably all seen and heard it. But yesterday in court, they played videos of Richard Allen being taken from his cell to other places within the prison. Sometimes he was naked because it was showering and stuff like that. They also showed videos of him in the cell with the whole feces crap and all of that, but they didn't allow the gallery to see it. They moved the screen to where only the jury could see it. And Rosie said they were doing that to protect the dignity of Richard Allen and his privacy. And I'm sitting here, as soon as Aspen and Turbo and everybody was telling me this, the inside of me was, I wanted to scream. I just wanted to scream because the first thing that came out of my mouth was, what about Abby and Libby's dignity? What about their rights? It's one of the biggest things I have, the problem with our justice system in this country, is that once a case comes to court, the victims are re-victimized 95% of the time. They get re-victimized in court. The families get re-victimized. And everything is about protecting the rights of the accused. And I'm sorry, but I think that needs to be balanced some. I'm not saying that Richard Allen's rights shouldn't be protected. They should be. He is innocent until proven guilty. But my God, people, let's be real here, I just think it's horrible. Now, with that being said, somebody asked me, what in the world, why would Gull allow it to happen this way? We've had this, and I had this conversation on Saturday with a whole bunch of different people. But, and I'm like, there's a number of reasons in my mind. One, I think no matter how difficult it was for the autopsy photos and the crime scene photos to be shown, for the families to have to see and witness all of that, I think it was imperative for people to understand the horrific nature of the crime. We have an idea in our heads how horrific it is, but until you actually see it, and I get it, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And, you can always preface it beforehand so that people that don't want to see it can either turn away or whatever. But it just is heartbreaking. These are two little girls that we're talking about here, 8th graders. They were in 8th grade, you guys. And they were scared freaking to death. This guy had a gun on them. And it's just these social media types and these people that are doing this for recognition, to build their channels and to do whatever the heck it is that they think that they should be doing is disgusting behavior. I just don't understand. And I felt sick. I was really glad I wasn't in there, because I think I would have lost it. I really do. I would have been so mad and so upset. I was upset as it was. And so then the exciting thing that happened for me on Saturday was I thought I was having lunch with Aspen in Lafayette, and he told me where to go and everything. And when I got there, it turns out that they had surprised me, and Susan Hendricks was there. So I got to finally meet Susan, and I had lunch with her, and with Aspen and with Turbo and Teddy on Saturday. And it was fantastic. I was so happy to finally meet her. She's as amazing as I thought she would be. But yeah, it was it was a whirlwind trip. It was a lot of emotions. I had every emotion kind of on the spectrum, but to get to meet creators that I have respected and followed and worked with for years, I just felt amazing. I really, truly did. And I was just in awe of these people. I had a really, really good time, and there's some really good people there that are covering this case. And Turbo has put in hours and hours of days sitting in that courtroom. She's got like over 1,200 pages of notes. I mean, I told her I'm going to bring her on my show when this is all said and done, and she can get some of this stuff put together so we can talk about it. But I wouldn't, I'm not going to be at all surprised at what happens this week. I don't think the defense has much by not allowing them to do this whole Odin angle. I really don't know what they're going to do, except they're going to hit away at or try to debunk whatever the ballistic evidence. I think they're going to go with that, and they're going to try to hit at the actual investigation itself, because they really don't have anything else or anywhere else to go, which is interesting when you stop and think about it, because every investigation is going to have errors, and every investigation is going to have missteps. None of that negates the fact that Richard Allen placed himself on that bridge on that day at the same time that the girls were there. No other man was seen. No other man was dressed that way. He backed his car in at the CPS building. He backs his car in at CVS. That's consistent. He doesn't tell his wife. I don't know if anybody caught this, but when you listen to the tapes of the interview that was done on the 26th of October in 2022, where they leave him and his wife alone in that interview room, and Jerry Holman leaves, she looks right at Richard Allen and says, "You didn't tell me you were on the bridge." So she is saying he told her he was on the trails, but didn't tell her he was on the bridge. That's huge, right? Why would he leave that out? I mean, the fact that she can't get past why his bullet is at the crime scene. I don't know what to say to that, she asked him, when he says, "Well, you know I couldn't do this." And her answer was, "I don't know how to answer that question." Richard Allen told everyone in the prison, "I'm not crazy, I'm only acting crazy." That came out in court. He said it, his own mouth. "I'm not crazy, I'm only acting crazy." And it doesn't matter if he is crazy or if he was crazy last year. It doesn't matter, guys. What matters is, what was his state of mind in 2017? What was his state of mind on February 13th in 2017? He wasn't crazy. This was a man who was living his life. He was holding down a job. He was going to work. He was not crazy. Now, after the crime was committed, just like Jerry Holman told him, hell, if I did what you did, I would be drinking and feeling depressed and having all kinds of anxiety as well. There's so much damning evidence, and his confessions are direct evidence. It's not circumstantial. These are direct evidence. Oh, Joan, you're very welcome. She says, "Thank you, Kristen, for going. It is so hard for all the supporters not to see the evidence to help us accept the verdict. I am so grateful to hear it from you and others like Aspen we trust." You are so very welcome. I know that there are so many different narratives out there, but I'm here to tell you guys, even the reporters from the news media outlets are not reporting everything that's happening in that courtroom. Remember that. They pick and choose words and put out what's going to sell. That's what they put out. Everything I've heard, everything that I've done, that I've dealt with since this trial started, and after being in that courtroom on Friday and seeing him and hearing everything that I heard, they have the right guy. They have the right guy, in my opinion. And if I was to have to vote, I would vote for a guilty verdict. Now, he's innocent until proven guilty. The jury, I saw somebody earlier ask a question somewhere, and I don't remember where it was, and I don't remember even if it was in my comments or whatever on my community page. But somebody asked on whether or not the jury gets to look at their notes or interchange notes with each other before the defense rests. And the answer to that is no. They are given explicit instructions every day and every time they're dismissed by Judge Gull, that they are not to discuss the case amongst themselves or with anyone else, and that all of their notes and everything has to remain in the courthouse. So they don't get to take them with them or anything like that. When they finally get their jury instruction to go into deliberation, then they can take their notes with them and they'll be able to talk about stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. These jurors are engaged to watch them. They seem to be very tuned in to what the witnesses are saying. They're asking poignant questions, I think, very smart, poignant questions. And so that makes me happy, because that makes me feel better about them. The fact that they're just not, oh, well, whatever. I believe that, and, this man may not have been treated right in jail or in prison. It does not negate the fact that two beautiful little girls' lives were snuffed out and taken by this man. And the writing's on the wall. Maybe he started acting the way he was because he saw what his life was going to be like forever in jail, because he'll never be able to be in general population. He won't live long enough to be in general population if they were to put him there, And so it's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. I am so over some of this. Hold on a minute, guys. Sorry. I just feel like, oh, that's the other thing. Because I haven't posted any of the photos or anything that I took while I was gone. I got to meet Tom Webster. Guys, he's something. Tom is a sweetheart. He's something. But yeah, I did get to meet Tom, and he flew back home on Saturday. My hat is off to Tom. His coverage has been amazing, and he um uh has done a really good recap of what's going on in court. Like I said, I can't say enough about the people that are there every single day that are doing this. You guys, it's cold here in the Midwest, in Illinois and Indiana right now. It has got cold. It's cold and wet. We've been having rain. It's been windy. I mean, super windy. And with all of that, and you're getting temperatures down in the 30s at night, that's pretty doggone cold to be sitting outside at night waiting to go into court the next day. So, to wither and sit out in the rain and stuff. And I will say this, I did meet Greeno, guys, and I told him on Saturday when I left for him to go out and get as many of his local friends as he could to come in there and try to get seats for the family. If he was really about supporting Abby and Libby's families, then that's what he needed to be doing, because they need to take away as many of these bad actors' seats as they possibly can. I hate seeing them in there. It's just, like I said, I just can't. And yeah. And it's just, I I just can't imagine people that do some of the things that I've just seen and heard. Um, I guess I just missed some of the crazy yesterday because I did see Noe there. I don't know him. I don't care to know him. I don't need to know him. But I guess Rick was there, Snay, as well. Thank God I didn't see him, because I told a couple people I'd probably be in jail. Frank Meister would be having to bail my ass out when he showed up today. Frank is in Delphi, by the way, guys. He is at his hotel and he is chilling, and he is going to be there tomorrow for the families. And I'm sad that I missed him, but I'm glad that we both were able to be there. I did see that picture. But it's not about any of them. This is about Abby and Libby. So I just tried my best to be on my best behavior. And like I said, I couldn't, I had to call out Andrea. I was just over it. They are not allowed to be on the courthouse grounds. The deputies are right there, and they are very adamant that they cannot be on the courthouse grounds. But yeah, it was a lot, guys. It was a lot. I'm glad I went. Like I said, I'm glad I made that decision to go. I don't regret it at all. And I will always have that feeling of knowing from looking at this man and watching him and listening to the evidence against him, I have no doubt in my mind that this is Bridge Guy. This man is Bridge Guy. And that's all we need on this case. I think that we will have a verdict. I don't think this is going to be a hung jury. I just don't see that happening. And I think that they have enough to get a verdict. Now, with all of that being said, there have been other cases where people have felt 100% confident that the jury was going to go one way and they didn't. So we all know some of those high-profile cases. So we just have to be patient. But it's coming, absolutely coming to close. And we are going to know very, very soon. And all I can say is to please keep the families in your prayers and your thoughts, because this is weighing heavily on them. And to see Kelsey pregnant and trying to deal with this and deal with the crazies out there that are still pointing fingers at her, and people who are posting that Libby had a handful of 70 hairs in her hand. That's a freaking lie, and you need to stop it. I'm so absolutely sick and tired of people that want to put BS out there. And you've got Julie Melvin types running everywhere, and all of these people that are trying to do whatever harm they can. It doesn't really matter. The thing that matters are the 12 jurors and the 4 alternates that, well, actually 3 now, that are sitting there. Those will be the people that actually matter and what they think matters. But I've said it to you guys for so long. This case is not about any of us. It's not about us. This is about justice for 2 little girls who we should never forget. Ever should we forget what happened to them and what was done to them. And all the people that are standing up and saying, oh my God, but he's gone through this and he's gone through that. If that was your little girl that was up on that big screen with her autopsy photos and her crime scene photos, with her neck slashed and blood everywhere, how would you feel? It's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. So, yeah. That's all I got for you guys tonight, guys. I did, like I said, I did see Bob Mata. He's in thick as thieves with the defense, and being a big support to Kathy Allen. And I just, I don't know. I saw Cody. Cody and his wife were in the same row as I was in. Cody looks really good, you guys. Yeah, I was surprised to see how strong these people are. These family members are coming to this court and trying to be there every day as much as they can. Tara is one strong cookie. She is really a strong lady, and she puts up with a lot, and holds and bites her tongue. But yeah, I thank you guys all for tuning in and being here. I appreciate you. Frank, I hope you have a good day tomorrow. Let me know how things are going. I have Jackson tomorrow because it's a no school day. So he's with me all day tomorrow. So I'll be around. I won't be doing much of anything, but like I said, you guys, I'm ready. I'm ready for this and to see where the rest of this week goes. But thank you so much for all of you who support me and behind the crime door and allow me to do this, because without all of you, it would be really not, I mean, I wouldn't obviously be doing it. So I appreciate each and every one of you. And I thank you for hanging in there. Make sure that you pick and choose who you listen to and what you're watching. Somebody I saw say something about Gray Hughes. He has done amazing videos these last few weeks, trying to put everything together to show everybody that Richard Allen is guilty, and to show that, you know, by using animation on the bridge, on the trails, to show you the timeline and how it's so tight. Make sure you go out and look at those, because it really, really will open your eyes. But, oh, Linda, thank you so much. You guys are the amazing ones that sit here and listen to me babble for hours at a time. So you guys are pretty amazing. So, but I love all of you. Thank you so much to my moderators for being here. I appreciate you. And I love even all of you. And again, thanks so much. I I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Have a good evening, everyone.